drinks alcohol and takes medical drugs and all these things. But in spite of that, we know we have a mission. And so the biological purpose is really the essence of spiritual reality. Do you follow that? The way I look at your body, it's either spiritually being supported or not. And when it's not being supported, it awakens you by giving you a disorder. Now, disease is no more than a disorder. Remember that. To eliminate a disease, we have to create order. But the order must start with our mind, not first with diet. When I was young and naive, and as a nutritional scientist and a biochemist, it would confuse me because I'd watch people eat exactly the way they should and still be sick. And then I finally realized, oh my God, I've got to bring psychotherapists here to Hippocrates. And once we started to work with people on that level, and they found a way to change their negativity, their patterns, their addictions. You know how big and fat I was at one point? I was like this. I was so addicted I couldn't believe it. And I used to smoke cigarettes. Me. I'm not talking about somebody else. I don't do that. I'm only talking about me. Bottom line is, it was hard for me to stick to a good diet until I finally looked at what the problem was. The problem wasn't the food. The problem was I didn't like myself deep down. The problem was I didn't care enough. I didn't honor. I said I liked and trusted Spirit of God. I didn't. I was spitting in God's face every day by abusing the gift He gave me, the human body. And if you can get to that place of being blatantly honest and blatantly clear, it evolves you on a spiritual level. I could no longer lie, cheat, and steal. I had to change. Because you cannot be an awakened and an aware person and abuse yourself at the same time. Shame on us. As you see the exceptional intelligence of this occur, we seemingly have spent the majority of the time in our species' existence creating a viable way of suicide. Through responsible personal choices, we can bring about a new age that will normalize this paramount degradation. I see it. What's encouraging to me, 41 years later, there are millions and millions and millions of people standing up straight and becoming complete again. And if there's any community in the world I would just get on my knees and pray could happen, it's right here in the what I call the origins or the center of the universe. If the Jewish people in the holiest city on the planet Earth cannot do this, who can do it? Are we going to wait for God to do it for you? Get over it. If I were God, believe me. There'd be some kicking going on. Now, here's science, by the way, that's absolute clear science. It's the most advanced science on the planet Earth. We're going to go through this quickly. What we realize now is every major disease on a biological basis comes from this. What you're watching is protein and sugar. That cancers, kidney disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, arthritis, every major disease in the world comes from this. And what happens when you eat these foods, they not only give you disease, but they age you. Watch what happens. Yeah, I'll turn it off. Thank you. Watch what happens to that attractive young lady. Why? Because of sugar and proteins. What kind of sugar? Every kind of sugar. You end up with diabetes. You end up with vascular disease, heart attacks. You end up with Alzheimer's disease. You end up with kidney disease, etc. Now, these are called AGEs. Every legitimate scientist in the world now has to catch up to this. Again, this is only 1 month that this is validated absolutely scientifically in 5 nations in Europe, Northern Europe. And there's nobody anymore that can use an excuse that we don't know what a disease is. Give me more money for the Israeli Cancer Association. Give me more money for the Israeli Cardiovascular Association. What you're doing is throwing money away to the pharmaceutical companies who are taking the money and trying to find ways to create drugs to charge you for. What you better do is change your life. And how you change your life is change your mind. And guess what? There's a nice device here that they won't let anyone buy. I ordered one and I can't buy one. This device is the most advanced diagnostic tool that's ever been made on the planet Earth. That within a matter of a few minutes, I'm not only going to tell you what disease you have, but what disease you may get 10 years from now. Now, this could actually replace billions and trillions of dollars of equipment at hospitals worldwide. Only one place in the world now, unfortunately, you can get this, Germany, where it was created. On the wall of my room, to give some levity to people, because every day when I'm there, there's 20 people there telling me some doctor told them they're going to die. And about 3 or 4 feet from where they sit in front of my desk, I say, look over there, that's a trilobite. Remember what we started this with? The little single-cell life form that created oxygen, and all of us came from that? A trilobite was the very first creature that came on the planet. It's 550 million years old. So whenever you think, oh my God, I have problems and it's overwhelming, relax. Put yourself into the picture of the universe, that web we spoke about. Relax. Everything is really going to be perfectly fine. I've seen, with the tens of thousands of people I've worked with personally and directly, all over the world, the ones who heal are the ones who get that God is with them. They don't intellectually tell me that. They prove it. In the large scheme of things, all becomes well as time passes. Look at this little beautiful creature. You can give the most negative person an opportunity to be next to a baby, we melt. Why? Because that's the purity. That's the universe you see. We are perfect people who have endless resources to do good. And you know what we do is we get caught up with a few crazy people. I travel the world. Almost everyone wants to be loved. They want to love. They want families. They want friends. They want communities. They want freedom. And then you have a few thousand people in the world who are completely out of control that want to control you and everyone else. And that's what we've done. We've lowered ourselves to their level. And how this is going to change, really and spiritually, is we all raise ourselves to truth. When we raise ourselves to truth, it will be so blatantly evident that everything else will eventually fall to the wayside. And it may take a long time, but I tell you, that's the only way we're going to get to where we need to go. And where we need to go is back to where we began. Remember that. At the beginning, everything was perfectly fine. Then what happened again? The free will. This began by self-love that can be supported by making instinctually wise food choices and developing fruitful relationships and genuine pursuits. Unfortunately, we allow cultural indoctrination and our biological disaster to mold us into lesser people. Here's an example of a woman who came to us. I always mention that I like everyone. It takes a whole lot for me not to like somebody. I didn't like this lady. And then the second day she was with us, I sat and I looked at her medical report and I got compassion. I still didn't like her, but I got compassion. And why? We'll read about her. She had been in such pain and hadn't slept for so many years, for decades, that she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't sit up. And all she did is bark, and she was angry. We actually had the night nurse go in and see her every 2-3 hours to make sure she didn't commit suicide. She was so desperate that she wanted to give up. She also had Lyme's disease. Do you know what that is? Systemic cancer. She had cancer that was showing on 7 sites in her body. And she was crippled with arthritis. This woman happened to be, we have all kinds of people that come to us. Very poor people and very rich people. She was the upper level there. So she had all the money in the world to go. She told me, to Jerusalem, not to Tel Aviv twice, to see some expert over here. Couldn't help. New York, Europe, all over the place. Why? Because they look at things in the wrong way. More drugs, more drugs, more drugs. In a mere 3 months, she eradicated all of her maladies and banished all of the medications that she had been on for decades. She then hopped on a plane to the Alps, where she skied for the first time in years. This is not a rarity, but what each of you possess when you are willing to respect yourself and the very life that was given to you. Now, bottom line is, you would say I'm making this story up. You know how often this happens every year at Hippocrates? We're sort of like the lords of health centers. People show up there all the time, and before you know it, crutches are going, this is going, that's going. But the difference is, we know in 2 minutes who's going to make it or not. You have victims, they're not going to make it. No matter how much I feed them, they want to be sick, they like to be sick, they get attention being sick, the whole thing is sick, 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 sick. I went to a hotel to work out today, the Hilton Hotel in Tel Aviv. So many victims there, they actually have a medical center in the Hilton Hotel. I said, isn't that amazing? They found out a new way to make money. They have all these mishmagash crazy people from all over the world here who are victims. And then you have people who are responsible. Their legs falling off, how are you? I'm okay, don't worry about a bit. And that's who the Israelis really are. So get it. Get it. You got to take the next step. It's not good enough to have a country, and to protect who you are, you've got to protect your biology. To prove you are spiritually awakened, you've got to respect everything you've been given, not just part of what you're given. This is what she looked like when she came, and this is what she was 30 days later. My poor wife had to go with her and actually clean the blood up that was coming out of her. This is what happens when you're willing to take responsibility. Just came back this year. She never came to anything except the consultations with the doctors and the nurses. Why? She was out on a bicycle. All the guests are given a bicycle, if you and they run all over the property. And we kept saying, do you want to do anything? No, I want to be a little girl. She said, it's been so many years I've done what I want to do. I just want to drive around on my bicycle all day long. So this could be any of us once we're willing to do what it takes.
What did she do?
The world, she came to Hippocrates, she did what we said, she did what God tells you to do. As Chief Seattle started, we are shepherds, stated, we are shepherds of the earth, not emperors. And it is for us to be sensible from our heart outward to all other lives. The consumption of animal fare and the milk from their breast is one bizarre example of how we are estranged from reality. Now, if you remember what you were told biblically, most of you here think that you're religious people, don't you? Who here doesn't think they're spiritual or religious? Raise your hand. We're going to ask you to leave. So since you've now submitted to the fact that you think you're like, you think you're awakened, you think you're spiritual, let's go back to page 1. Remember page 1? Page 1, when everything was perfectly fine. How were you supposed to eat?
Vegetarian.
Oh, interesting. Vegetarian. And then we did the SIN thing. What's that? Uh-oh. And what happened after? Then we started to go to the schlock food after that. SIN. Now, doesn't it mean we have an opportunity to go back to page 1 again? I'll tell you what happened to me. I went from a big, fat, angry guy who was addicted to food, cigarettes, meats, dairies, sugars, to a happy guy. That simple. And I'm not the exception. I see it every day, constantly. But again, you've got to make the first step. If you're sitting around waiting for somebody to heal you, you're in trouble. Israel and I are on the same exact page. We're not doctors that heal you, we're doctors that guide you. And we're in awe of those of you that do what it takes to get well. My heroes are you, people who have the responsibility and use the tools and get well. The consumption of these foods are bizarre. And don't tell me it's tradition. Tradition is page 1. Sin is the tradition we're in right now. By relinquishing these abnormalities, we can show how exceptional respect and allow the planet to begin mending. Human connectivity. As our living sperm engages a feminine egg, enzymes spark human life. It's actually enzymes, it's electric, that creates your little baby. Isn't that amazing? And from the moment forth, we are fully responsible as either givers or takers. Which side do you want to be on? We come alive by connectivity, and it is fundamental for us to continue connection emotionally, physically, spiritually.